Hi, welcome to
the countdown to the release of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet.
I didn't realize it until as of right now, but I've really wanted to talk about this for a long time. Let's go back in time for a minute and look at this tweet I made on the 26th of February this year. Unfortunately, today was the Pokemon Go Johto Tour, so I literally spent 12 hours today doing stuff in Pokemon Go. Yeah, so this is a true story, okay? And no, shut up, I don't want your offers right now. I'm currently working on pitching the rights to this story and my likeness to every major TV network and Hollywood studio for a dramatic retelling right now, and I've got several promising leads, so I'm doing just fine for myself, thank you. Where was I? Right, so earlier this year I literally spent over 12 hours straight playing Pokemon Go in a single day. But what would drive a man to do such a thing? Why? Well, the formula is quite simple. 1 part peer pressure, 1 part nostalgia, and 2 parts depression. Let's talk about it. So yeah, towards the beginning of the year, like the end of last year, I played a lot of Pokemon Go. I was a literal 5 years late to the party, but let me explain. When Pokemon Go first came out, it was a fad, that was it. A lot of mobile games come out to capitalize on something, and I've always had very little respect for the mobile gaming industry, despite the endless potential the platform has.
Allow me to explain the science behind micropay freemium gaming. For years, the concept behind gaming was simple. You pay for the game and you enjoy. With mobile apps, we now have the ability to make games that are boring and stupid. But if you pay for incentives, you're rewarded.
It's almost like talk radio back when that was popular. You have this legendary platform where you can have shows where you can say or do anything as long as the network is okay with it. And what you end up with is a bunch of shows where the hosts just want to be Howard fucking Stern. Fuck me. Do something original is all I'm saying. Anyways, Pokemon Go is an outlier in that it's a mobile game that not only has managed to survive its initial fad status, but it's managed to continue thriving in a postmodern era for mobile gaming, where nobody gives two Rattatas asses about the platform anymore. I played it briefly within maybe 2 years of its launch, didn't care, and then for some reason came back and gave it another go in 2021. And this time I actually really enjoyed it. See, the thing that makes Pokemon Go great for me is its laid-back nature. There is a list of complaints about this game taller than the Washington Monument that players have about it, but honestly, I think it's because of these weaknesses that the game is great in the first place. Pokemon Go is a free-to-play game that relishes in not rushing the player into something, and that's something special. Despite having tired myself of the game since when the story takes place, I still boot it up and play it. And man, oh man, finding another person playing Pokemon Go in public might be one of the most intoxicating gaming experiences of all time. And that's saying something. You're talking to the guy that starts salivating when he sees a glass full of Guinness. But like I was saying, this game is super laid back. Despite having some players that are really hardcore, Pokemon Go manages to have a lot going on constantly while simultaneously not making people who only occasionally boot it up not feel like they're missing out on something. I genuinely love Pokemon Go, not entirely because of the game itself, but because it synergizes with my need to get outside at least once a day and walk around by myself. Alright, what am I doing? Why am I talking about Pokemon Go itself so much? Who cares? I need to get into the actual meat and potatoes of why I'm bringing up Pokemon Go right now. The time I literally spent a full 12 hours and then some straight playing it. Well, it was on the day of the Johto Tour. As someone who had just started playing Pokemon Go recently, I was used to small throwaway event stuff like community days, but no, for once this was the real deal. The Johto Fest was an event that cost over $10 here in the US to experience in full, and this was like an all-out thing. They were even using exclusive gold and silver music arrangements during the event. They were spawning new Pokemon by the hour, and there was a lot in terms of event quests to complete within the event time. Yeah, about that. This event only lasted for 1 day, and despite my tendency to not take gaming nitpicks too seriously, I am completely on the side of those who did not like this. Given this event's high volume of content and premium price, why not have it last at least 1 more day? Sure, I was prepared. I'd made sure to have the day off work, and have adequate storage space in my Pokemon space and my item bag in advance, but what about those that have too much on their plate in real life already? Whatever. The point is to talk about myself and my experience with this event. So I started playing at around 9:30 in the morning and made sure I was ready to do a lot of catching. Once the event started, I took one look at everything and felt overwhelmed at everything. There were both many quests and collection challenges to complete. So how this event worked is that each hour of the day, a different pool of wild Johto Pokemon would be available to catch based on areas in Gold and Silver. So, for example, 1 hour would be Violet City, and another hour would be Goldenrod City. At first my goal was to just focus on quests, but that was even proving to be difficult, so I started even less ambitious and went for legendaries. There were quests to get all 3 roaming legendary dogs, and there were Johto legendaries to catch from raid battles, among others. I had a bit of a slow start, and I was confused by how the gym quest worked. You see, this was a pretty cool concept for a quest, but in execution this quest only works for areas with a lot of Pokestops. Thankfully, I'm in one of those areas. My closest local park didn't have any special gym battle Pokestops, but another nearby park, which, yes, I walked to from the first park, did have a Pokestop with the first gym battle. The problem with this system for less populated areas is that while gym Pokestops were actually plentiful, they were individually spawned with one of the 8 possible battles. So these needed to be fought in order, meaning that for a player to find every gym, they'd have to find the right Pokestops which were procedurally spawned in the correct order. Sounds complicated? Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of Pokestop checking involved when I was doing this. Well, once I figured out the whole hourly Pokemon system, I started going for all the collection challenges. This was the hardest task of the day by far. Around lunchtime I was starting to get into it, and when I made my way home to eat lunch, which would save me time and money in the grand scheme, I dropped incense to keep the Pokemon spawns up when I was away from places where they spawned a lot naturally. Once I ate, it was back on the road for me. In order to keep up the ridiculous pace required to get everything done, I tried to reduce the amount of time spent driving to an absolute minimum and parked at places where I could walk to multiple areas in a row, which had a lot of Pokestops and gyms. The cool thing about this event was that because it was such a huge deal, people were doing raid battles constantly, and joining one was super easy. The rooms were always full, and taking on even the highest level raids without any planning was doable. If I remember correctly, there were more free raid opportunities than normal as part of the event, because I don't remember having to pay to raid, even though I did it a lot that day. Well, my quests fell one by one, and I began focusing more and more on collecting every Johto Pokemon and 100%ing everything for this event. As the sun set, I finished up my last raids, in cases where the Pokemon I wanted wasn't nearby and I could get them through in-person raids. I'd find players through online Pokemon Go communities and join their raids. Well, one other challenge was beginning to hit me, and that was my battery. My phone had only gotten a recharge during my short lunch break, and now it was really close to dying. For the second time, probably. So I drove home, had less of a dinner and more of a snack, and left again. By now I pretty much was just trying to catch the rest of the Pokemon. Unfortunately, some of this challenge involved hatching eggs. I did not get lucky with these. For around the last hour, they made the Pokemon spawns a free-for-all where any Pokemon from Johto could spawn. I took my journey full circle and spent this time at the park where I had started 12 hours ago, and put up a valiant effort to complete the entire event 100%. Well, I didn't quite do it. I almost did, but those 1 or 2 elusive Pokemon slipped through my efforts. I was still proud of myself for getting as much done as I did though. It's funny because I did not mean to spend this long on the event. I predicted I'd take about 3 to 4 hours on it, and then just call it a day and enjoy the rest of the day doing something else. But because of how intense my need to finish everything was, time flew by and it was nearly midnight when I returned home. So this means I'm like a super hardcore Pokemon Go player now, right? No, quite the opposite. I literally fell straight off the game right afterwards. The Johto Fest might have been a chaotic and hectic mess, but it felt like the most life I had felt in Pokemon Go since I'd started playing. Going back to the vanilla game where things move at a much slower pace was just so underwhelming and unexciting for me. Well, like I said earlier, I still boot up Pokemon Go and play it from time to time. Maybe I will never dive as deep into it again as when I did for that 12-hour window, but spending 12 hours in real life going around and catching Pokemon might be the most hardcore thing I've ever done as a Pokemon player. It's funny thinking about it. The initial rise of Pokemon in the West felt like a fad, but it lasted, and the initial rise of Pokemon Go felt like a fad, but it's still around and still has a player base. Maybe not as big of a player base, but that player base still exists. And of course, don't get me started on the missed potential of the Let's Go games. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were really interesting and nice side games to the main games and had a lot going for them, but never met their full potential. And they never saw a continuation, which is sad because I thought the crossover concept was pretty cool. That being said, stay tuned for tomorrow when I talk about my very brief stint collecting Pokemon cards, why I did it, and what I still want out of it. Good night.